Welcome to Deconstructing Digital, the podcast where we deconstruct the opportunities and challenges that are felt by the built environment when digitalising their processes. Today, I'm joined by Andrew Knight, where we'll be discussing whether construction is really ready for AI. I'll just hand it to Andrew to introduce himself.
Thanks very much. Yeah, well, a pleasure to be here today. I've been at RICS nearly 13 years now, a long heritage before that in the commercial world and particularly data and technology. My role at RICS is, if it doesn't sound a little grandiose, is to look at the impact of AI, data and technology right across the built and natural environment. We've got over 112,000 members worldwide, and they work not only in construction, but right across the whole land and property life cycle. So obviously, AI, data and technologies had a huge and profound effect and will continue to do so on the sector. I'm very privileged in the sense I also work with an informal network of about 300 or 400 data and tech firms globally. So that gives me insight not only from our members and our member firms about what's happening in the sector, but also from the kind of Contech, prop tech world in terms of that innovation and disruption that's coming in as well.
Excellent. Well, clearly, it's fantastic to have you on the show today. So, big question to start. But what are you most excited about right now when it comes to the impacts that AI can have?
In a funny way, I'm most excited by the fact that actually there's a lovely meme on the internet I like about not wanting AI to write novels or film scripts, but to do the laundry. And I think for me, particularly in a sector that's been criticised, rightly or wrongly, for lagging behind in terms of productivity growth, I think what AI and indeed the whole digitisation agenda for the sector delivers, potentially, if we embrace it in the correct way, is really some step change in productivity and also some step change in the way we're able to curate the data. I mean, if we think of some of the issues that the built environment consistently bumps into in terms of quality and retrofit issues, if you think of the RAC issue of concrete in the UK, we haven't historically done a good job of A, being productive, and B, having better data about the assets we build.
And where do you see AI playing in that productivity piece?
I think, once again, it's AI not necessarily doing the kind of Terminator 2 sort of terribly edgy stuff, but really kind of quite prosaic tasks that take a lot of time for people, repetitive tasks that can be automated, and they free up the profession to do the higher value tasks. I think if we all look at our working days, I think we can all see things that we do that are repetitive, arguably quite boring, and don't add much value. And I think the critical thing is to augment what professionals do in the sector with AI. Steve Jobs, who sadly passed from Apple, talked about computers in general being a kind of force multiplier, an effectively 10-to-1 ratio of what you could do with a computer versus not having a computer. And somebody recently said that AI is like 100 times that, giving the productivity gain. So that's what particularly excites me, is the prosaic things that AI can help us with.
I think that's a fantastic point around how AI then plays a part within processes and activities that people are doing. What do you think that means when it comes to things such as ethics and data privacy?
Yeah, it's a big piece, and certainly at RICS, I'm very close to that. I'm currently writing, I'm a technical author for a responsible use of AI standard. And what we're doing to help the profession is not necessarily, indeed, really not at all getting into the bits and bytes of AI, but really these implications of bias and ethical use and privacy and cybersecurity, because we think one risk for the whole profession and the construction sector is not using AI, but clearly there are risks in using AI in terms of the impacts and arguably AI having the potential to get things wrong. It's not perfect. It needs to be trained on good quality data that's representative of the problems you're trying to solve. And you do need to think about privacy issues and also confidentiality. If we're thinking about commercial contracts, we do have to respect the agreements as well as these jurisdictional issues. So these problems can be solved, but the sector does need to go into it with their eyes wide open and manage these risks. These risks are manageable, but it's done if you have the education and awareness of what they are and how you can mitigate them.
Brilliant. And you talk about the education there and the ways to mitigate. Have you got any thoughts on how best to get this ingrained into practices within the construction industry?
I think yes, and I think understandably many practitioners at many levels of organisations will be slightly hesitant or concerned about the risks or indeed the costs or whether there's an ROI to using AI and data and technology. I think for me that the trick is not to boil the ocean, as the phrase goes. It's to start and also start from a business perspective. Let's not get carried away with technology. Technology is not an end in itself, it's a means to an end. So my recommendation would be is to start relatively small, think of business processes that could benefit from automation, and particularly that will benefit your clients as well as your internal processes. Look at those processes. Don't digitize them and use AI without thinking, is that process really optimal? So have some kind of business analysis, but build up, do things slowly, look at an issue, solve that with AI and data and tech if that's the right solution, then go to the next problem. So I think it's almost a kind of a bootstrap feel. And also do think about the fact you will need to take the people with you. Any kind of digitization IT project normally stands and falls on the people piece in terms of bringing people with you, making sure they're educated, making sure they're aware of the benefits and also the risks, and really treating it as a change management issue.
You made a really interesting point there about that conversation with your end customer and that contractor into being brought into that AI journey. Do you have any suggestions on to how to get them in that conversation and engaged?
I think really it starts from day one in the sense that we have to be transparent with our clients, the tiers of contractors. And I think from day one, you'd involve your supply chain and all your contractors and stakeholders in your AI journey, if that doesn't sound too pretentious, because they're probably thinking about the same issues and they're thinking, can they get value from it? They don't want to be left behind. There is a phrase which I kind of use not to kind of scare the horses, but that phrase around AI won't take your job, but somebody who uses AI might. So I think everybody's concerned they don't want to miss out. And certainly the last couple of years with the rise of generative AI, I think in a good way has raised this up the agenda. As we know, AI has been around a long, long time before that, but it has really taken it up to the C-level and also democratized it and put, to a degree, AI in everybody's pocket on their smartphones. But I think it's about talking openly with all your stakeholders, all those other professional people you engage with, your supply chain, and say, look, we're embarking on this journey. We'd like to take you with us. We feel everybody will benefit from us, and we all want to learn about how to do it right and get it right, hopefully first time.
And that digital journey and that AI journey, I think, is critically important. Have you any thoughts on how AI can really improve safety and conditions potentially on?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, one of the things that pre-exists the whole kind of Gen AI revolution is computer vision and the ability for images to be taken, particularly on sites where you have a number of safety risks, wearable technology. So there's already plenty of examples where people are using that combination of connectivity, Internet of Things, visual capture to improve site safety, to monitor risks. So I think that's already in many cases quite well embedded. And once again, I think people who are perhaps hesitant or about to start their journey, there are plenty of use cases out there where they can see this technology works, it's affordable, and it does deliver significant benefits in terms of mitigating risk. As I say, managing during COVID, it was used to manage team size and maintain social distancing. So already lots of examples where it does work.
I think when we look at the construction industry, there tends to be kind of three themes that I've seen at the moment that different areas are focusing on. So one is all about safety, which we touched upon there, and the ability to ensure that we're managing those sites in a secure and safe way. Are there any typical pieces you've seen where sustainability, another typically important piece, is also being addressed?
Yes, hugely. I mean, clearly the sector, the classic triangle with project management of, cost and functionality and time has always been that piece you're trying to balance. And I think we've now got to add, in addition to cost, that carbon piece, particularly looking obviously embodied carbon, but also thinking ahead to the operational phase. I think one of the great opportunities that the sector still needs to reap the benefits from is that whole life view of an asset, soft landings in terms of BIM data moving across the operational phase. And I think increasingly there will be this pressure and this analytical pressure to understand what are those design choices when it comes to embodied carbon, the trades-off of CapEx versus OpEx, how to manage the kind of refurbishment cycle as effectively as possible, and and as I say, to minimize not only embodied, but think about the impact on operational carbon as well. And I think given the multiple options you might have, the power of AI to kind of crunch those numbers, look at benchmarks, analyze the different design choices. I think there's a lot of power there to help this decarbonisation. As you know, if you look across the scope 1, 2 and 3, the built and natural environment is giving us probably 40% or so of carbon and other greenhouse emissions. So it's critical that we start with the initial design phase of asset through construction, through occupation, and indeed end of life to make sure we contribute to that decarbonisation journey.
I think that's such an excellent point around the end-to-end. It's about what's going into the actual design of the asset, the construction of it, and then that long-term maintenance, which really then drives into the sustainability. I think the third angle I've really seen all links into efficiency and productivity, and you touched on productivity at the top. Is there an example of where you've seen AI really make a difference when it comes to productivity?
Yeah, a couple of examples. I mean, some of these are these more generic use cases of AI, which will apply to any part of the built environment sector, and in fact, more generally around things as prosaic as project management tools, about document summaries, around managing data and using AI. If you think of the kind of contract management part of construction, there's a lot of time wasted chasing down emails and documents and trying to kind of organize that set of data that flows through a whole particularly large complex program of construction. So there's some real productivity gains around the way we manage data and documents, I think. And there's also, I think, if we think of particularly complex construction projects, a couple of issues, one of which is around using machine learning to optimize the work breakdown schedules, that sort of mix of team size and plant and machinery and the delivery of materials, where you've got potentially many different options about how to optimize a project pre-construction. And then tellingly, once you start that project, things happen, you need to actually then reschedule. So that approach of using AI can run the kind of simulations and look through the options that we as human beings simply couldn't do. And I think that can be tremendously powerful in optimizing how we run projects. So I think lots of examples there where we can use the analytical power and these more prosaic powers around document management, managing data, just to speed up processes in that way. If you think of the amount of time that people probably spend trying to collate documents and emails and pieces of correspondence and sign-offs and data, and albeit perhaps converting data from one spreadsheet to the next, a lot of that kind of work can now be automated potentially.
And I love that theme you're talking about there around productivity and efficiency, and how actually using AI to create that documents is so important. But that then comes right back to that safety point as well. The fact that having all of that documentation, ensuring that the right material is used throughout, is critically important to securing the safety of people when they're actually living within that built environment that has been created.
Indeed. And certainly when you think of the UK as a marketplace, post-Grenfell and the Hackett inquiry, we now have this golden thread concept. And I think the sector is still, perhaps struggling is the wrong word, but still coming to terms with how to actually physically embed that and implement that golden thread. But it's essentially, as you say, having that curated, persistent set of data that from birth to death will help people manage a building and critically manage the safety aspect. And although that golden thread starts really from the Building Safety Act and this emphasis on high-rise buildings, I was chatting to some people yesterday, and there seems no point in not using that approach for all the assets we build and maintain. We need that information for whatever kind of asset to maximize its efficiency and, as you say, maximize the safety for the people who live, work and play in those buildings.
One of the things I had never truly appreciated till I started working in the construction industry just over 3 years ago was the importance of the supply chain, and actually how everything is critically dependent on different parties. What role do you think AI could play in starting to connect those parties together?
Yeah, I mean, one of the issues, and there's a number of ways I think it can do it, but I think one of the issues that does bedevil not only the construction sector, but the whole kind of built environment is the fact that we live in a very kind of document-heavy world. And a lot of the issues you'll have when you have that complex supply chain and other stakeholders you're dealing with is that incompatibility of some of the data that you're trying to receive and send, the fact it's in different standards. And also a lot of it will be technically probably digital, but only insofar as it's a PDF or a Word document. And what AI is becoming increasingly good at is organizing those documents, extracting information from them, even if it's as prosaic as checking invoices and just making sure the invoice matches the PO and flagging up discrepancies. So, once again, not Terminator 2, not rocket science. It's very clever, but it's really helping us with that volume of data passing back and forth in different formats, sometimes as documents where we need to make it structured, we need to summarize it, and we need to make the flow of information between stakeholders simpler and easier, because we have to be realistic. We're not going to get common data standards. So we do need to use AI as a powerful tool for helping us get data flowing around.
You touched upon the importance of starting on that AI journey and getting people engaged. How do you think people could actually shape a value statement around AI?
Once again, I go back to this piece around forget AI, think about your business issues, think about your processes, think about where your to be blunt, wasting time. Think about where those inefficiencies are and start with that as your starting position and say, okay, we have an issue here. We have a team of X people. If we do a bit of old-fashioned time and emotion, how much time are they spending doing various tasks? And how can we automate those tasks? It's fascinating when you come back to this sort of slightly concerning thought that many people have that AI will destroy jobs. I was watching a very large property consultancy firm showing how they were using generative AI, and they said, "Look, on the face of it, this looks like an approach that's going to effectively, require us to have less people." And I said, "Well, I'm going to push back on this." He said, "We don't have enough people. We're short of people. There's a permanent skill shortage in our sector. So actually, what this enables us to do is get our work done with what is a finite resource, the people we have." So I think, once again, it's about taking people with you, but understanding that it's a business issue. It's not necessarily a technical issue. Look at the process, look at where you can make those productivity gains, and make sure what's the right AI, data, and tech to help with that. It might not technically be AI. It might just be some automated process that doesn't necessarily use AI as such. But if it's helping you re-engineer the way you do things and look at the value add that you generally do have to maintain, and perhaps look at the processes and re-engineer them, then use AI where it makes sense.
I absolutely love that, and it resonates because that's a common theme that I'm hearing from my customers. It's not about reducing cost. It's about enabling people to do better, higher quality work that's right first time with the people they've got, and enabling those people as well on that digital journey and equipping them with new skills.
Yeah. And indeed, we think from as a professional body, where we look at our ongoing work around getting the next generation into the built environment. And one thing we're very concerned is that the built environment is seen as an attractive digital profession, so that we want to attract the next generation from as broad a demographic as possible and make that next generation aware of how exciting the sector is, and that they'll be using up-to-date technology, and they won't be doing tedious tasks. They'll be doing higher value, consultative, value-added tasks, which is primarily about dealing with people and giving the best advice.
So do you think that will be a critical part when it comes to recruiting talent into the construction and built environment, actually using AI as a way of getting people in and getting people excited?
I think so, yeah. I think, for better or for worse, the construction sector has a slightly kind of cliched view from the outside world. If you ask your agency for some stock photographs, you undoubtedly will get some pictures of people with yellow hard hats on a muddy building site, and that still will remain part of the role. But I think we also have to realize there's an awful lot of data and technology already being used, from design through land acquisition, planning, all the way through, as we've talked, in terms of occupancy and indeed valuation and other use cases. And I think people need to realize that, like any profession, they will have the best of class digital tools to help them do their job.
I think, and that's another thing, there's so many different personas involved when it comes to that end-to-end life cycle. And I think there's so many different instances where AI can actually make people's jobs better and make them more rewarding and make them more fulfilling. And we talked about it's really important that people adopt the technology, especially when it comes to productivity and efficiency. If we can tie that back to safety in the workplace, then that's only going to drive adoption.
Well, indeed, and one thing that we focus on clearly is safety of the workforce. But I was at an event a few weeks ago speaking, and one of the use cases demonstrated there of using AI was using AI as a natural language front end to a BIM model. And this BIM model was particularly complex and particularly safety related, because it was related to the construction of a nuclear power station. Now, there you want to make sure the rebars and the concrete and all the additional objects you put into that construction project are really correct and with very, very tight tolerances. And there they were using an iPad type device, walking around site with people, yes, with a hard hat on, using AI to ask the BIM model, okay, where am I? What objects do I need to be installing today? And that's safety at the highest level.
I think the topic of what we wanted to cover off today is construction and built environment ready for AI? And I think it's already there.
Well, I think one of the challenges is, as you know, it's a hugely fragmented sector, many, many different sizes of people involved, all the way down the supply chain and with the other professions that you're involved in. And I guess the challenge is really making sure that we democratize this. I mean, there's clearly a lot of good work already going on, but we do need to make sure it does percolate down the supply chain, and that all those smaller organizations who are such a critical part of the built environment also gain the benefits from it as well. Because it's one thing to look at that extreme example of a very highly technical project like a nuclear power station, but we need to make sure that we can bring the technology into the hands of everybody within the built environment, whatever size of organization they're working in.
You clearly have a breadth of experience. What is the one thing you know now that you wish you'd knew at the start of your career?
Given how long my career has been, that's almost a difficult one. I started my career on computing with things called punch cards, and obviously you've no idea what I'm talking about. I was working on the precursor of AI systems, or expert systems as they were called back in the 80s. I guess what I wish I'd known now is what I knew about what I was doing when I was writing manufacturing systems back in the 80s is I wish I'd gone to the construction and the built environment sector earlier in my life and said, look, you are missing out. People are already ahead of you, and they are to an extent. They're decades ahead of us in the terms of the way they have digitized and computerized their operations. And the built environment is different. It's not like making a car or an aeroplane in a controlled environment. You do rock up at an empty field with a piece of plant and you start your groundworks, and often projects are very much one-offs. We don't have the repeatability and the controlled environments of manufacturing, but we have lagged behind the opportunity that digitization, even without AI, can bring to a sector in terms of efficiency and safety and productivity.
I think that's incredible. The one thing you wish you'd known is that you'd started within construction sooner. I think that's fantastic. Well, Andrew, it was amazing being having you on the podcast today, and we did it. We deconstructed digital.
Pleasure.